Y'all been asking me, and it's now time to be talking about corn. Oh yeah. Hey everyone, welcome back to Grains and Grit. My name is Felicia. For those of you who've been around for a while, welcome back. And for those who are new on this channel, we talk all the things about real whole grains, milling your wheat, etc., etc. This video is actually going to be a part of two series that I'm doing here on YouTube. The first series is one I started with my einkorn video a couple weeks ago, all about einkorn and diving in deep to the grain, which I now have a name for that playlist series, and we're going to be calling it Meet the Grain, where we start diving deep into specific grains each video. And in this video, we're going to be talking about corn. But that also kicks off another series because there's no way that I can cover everything about corn in one video. So we're also going to be kicking off a new series all about corn and all the amazing things that you can do with corn. So in this video, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be diving down deep into corn, the history of it, who mainly consumes corn as their main grains, and more specifically, I'm going to be teaching y'all how to nixtamalize corn. So I am going to be showing you how to nixtamalize your corn. You've heard me talk about it before. I'm going to be showing you how to do that in this video, as well as talking about why nixtamalization matters. Say that 5 times fast. Nixtamalization, yeah. Why that matters, when you need to do it, the history of it, all the things. Good news, if you are a huge fan of authentic Mexican food, then you're gonna love this video and especially love this series. So in the series about corn, in this video, we're gonna be talking about the history and specifically nixtamalization of corn. In other videos that we're gonna be doing, I'm gonna be showing you how to make corn tortillas, authentic corn tortillas. We're going to be doing another video all about grits. I'm also going to be doing another video about the different corn varieties because yes, there's more than one type of corn out there. And then probably another video of some very fun off-the-wall recipes using corn, such as the corn drink known as atole. Maybe do some popcorn, all things like that with corn. Okay, so first of all, what's the big deal about corn? Well, that's mainly because I talk about wheat berries a ton, all the time on this channel. And that's because that wheat is generally the most popular grain, especially for Europeans, that type of, that part of the world, Europe, Middle East, places like that. It is pretty much a whole lot of wheat and the varieties of wheat. But when you got over to Mesoamerica, their main grain is predominantly corn, and there is a fascinating history with corn. Mesoamerican history, and when I say Mesoamerica, I'm mainly talking about modern day Mexico, but Mesoamerica used to contain a whole lot of Mexico, Central America, but for thousands of years, their main grain has been corn. But funny thing is corn by itself, actually you would not be able to survive on just corn like you would be able to with wheat. And we'll be talking about that later. Now, first of all, let's talk about the history of corn. And there's a few books here that I actually recommend if you really want to dive deep into the history of corn. The biggest one is Tacopedia. This is where a lot of my information comes from, where they actually talk about the history of it, because to the ancient Aztecs, Mayans, Incas, corn was considered to be a god. It was the sustainer of their life. Their beliefs was that the first man and woman was created out of masa dough, which is from corn. And it's just really, really fascinating. I mean, this was their lifeblood, was corn. And even still today, especially in Mexico, corn is their dominating grain. It wasn't until the conquistadors basically came introducing wheat that even there became flour tortillas, and that's mainly in northern Mexico. So shocker, in case you didn't know, tortillas are corn-based. Traditionally, they are corn tortillas, not flour tortillas. But if you really love your taco nights, but you want to take it up a whole lot of notches and actually do authentic Mexican tacos, not just your American ground beef, lettuce, sour cream type stuff, then this book, Tacopedia, will really dive into your Mexican food. And for other Mexican food in general, the Mexican Home Kitchen is wonderful, as well as this new one that I found, which is Oaxaca, which is home cooking from the heart of Mexico, predominantly Oaxacan cooking, which Oaxaca is a state in Mexico. So these are excellent books. I will link them down in the description below. But if you really want to learn a good history, Tacopedia is the one to do. Let's talk about the history of corn. Traditionally, it is called maize. Now, if you read your King James Bible, you will see the word corn in there, but that is not talking about this corn. That is talking about grains such as your barley, your spelt, your wheat varieties, not actual corn. It wasn't until, as far as we know, that Christopher Columbus, when he took a few ears of corn back to Europe, that's when Europe was actually introduced to what we know today as corn. But traditionally speaking, Mesoamerican cultures called it maize. So, fun Mexican legends about corn. This is from Tacopedia, that the serpent god Quetzalcoatl, I cannot pronounce Aztec names. To save my life, forgive me. So the serpent god convinced a black ant to reveal where the maize kernels were hidden, and that was how the god came upon the path leading to the, quote, the mountain of our sustenance, and then delivered the maize to our lips. So we have the ants to thank. So these are all Mexican legends based on corn, and again, it's so fascinating. Because again, they had a god of maize in the Aztec world. I'm not going to try and pronounce its name, but it was the god of ripe corn, along with his wife, who provided sustenance for humankind as well. And there's many, many legends about that. The Incas, the Mayas, they all have their god of corn because, again, to them, corn was their staple. There was no life without maize, without their grain. And the great thing about corn is, they do like everything with the plant. They even use the leaves. That's where you wrap it up for tamales. They use the corn. Just so much of the corn plant. It was a huge part of their life. Now, a huge part of corn with Mesoamerican culture is you have to talk about nixtamalization. Nixtamalizing corn. It was a huge part, and it allowed Mesoamerican cultures to actually thrive with corn being their dominant grain. So now let's talk about nixtamalizing and how it just really revolutionizes corn. And we're going to be talking about why you need it, and later on, again, I will be showing you exactly how to do it. First of all, what does it mean to nixtamalize corn? It's actually very simple for a complicated word, and all that means is it's corn kernels that have been soaked in a calcium lime solution overnight, and then it's rinsed really well, and then you have nixtamalized corn. You've also probably heard it whenever you hear of hominy. So hominy grits, hominy corn, that's corn that has been nixtamalized, and you have to nixtamalize it in order to make corn tortillas. So I'm going to be showing you how to nixtamalize it later, but just know that it is the base that you have to start with in order to then make corn tortillas, or just basically your masa dough that is used to make corn tortillas, tamales, so many other things with Hispanic Mexican cooking. It also produces hominy corn for your hominy grits and things like that, which we'll cover that in another video. So what does nixtamalization do, and why do you need it? And this is where I think a lot of people get confused, where a lot of the lines have been blurred, because you hear about people like you must soak or sprout wheat berries in order for it to be sufficient enough for you as a diet. And that is not true. Now, there is a time to soak, and I've done videos all about that. But I think a lot of people get that confused, because in order to actually survive solely on corn, you actually do have to nixtamalize it. You do have to tweak it in order for that to be your main grain, to not become nutrient deficient. And so I think that's why the lines got crossed with corn to wheat and all grains, when actually it's mainly just corn. All right, so what is nixtamalization? Why is it so important? And I'm actually just going to read from the book Tacopedia, because there's really no better way to explain it than what they say. So they state, without the process of nixtamalization, maize would not be as nourishing as it is. In its natural state as a grain, maize is nutritionally inefficient as a cereal staple. It is deficient in niacin, which is essential for vitamin absorption. This deficiency can lead to malnutrition and pellagra, a potentially fatal condition, which you've probably heard about before when I've gone into the history of what happened when they started making white flour for the masses. Pellagra and beriberi became two epidemic diseases. So continue, a complete utilization of the nutritional advantages of maize would not have been possible without the invention of the process of nixtamalization. It's one of the great technological achievements of Mesoamerica. Its invention made maize a more easily digestible food and permitted the development of Mesoamerican civilizations. Soaking it in alkaline water increases its protein value and the presence of calcium and niacin. We can deduce that this was a technique invented at the beginnings of Mesoamerican civilization. So we actually have the oldest evidence of this technique comes from mid-preclassical period in the south of Guatemala between 1000 and 800 BC. So this is thousands of years old. And funny thing about nixtamalization is we have no idea how it started. We have no idea who got this idea, because calcium lime does come basically from wood ash. You can make it yourself. So who knows if it was a happy accident, experimentation? No one knows, but this happened thousands of years ago, and it greatly increased the nutritional value of corn and allowed Mesoamerican cultures to thrive with this being their main grain. And the other great thing about nixtamalization is it's only through nixtamalization that you can make corn tortillas, because that's the way that corn then becomes pliable enough for tortillas. Otherwise, if you were to just grind up corn, which you can do for cornbread, and I've got a video for that, it's not going to come together as a dough like it should to make corn tortillas. So if you've ever tried corn tortillas by just grinding up corn and it not work, that's why you have to nixtamalize it. And thank the Lord to whoever discovered nixtamalization of corn, because without it, we would not have corn tortillas. Thus, we would not have tacos. And where would we be? Where would this world be? So that is the history of nixtamalization. So again, you absolutely have to do it if you're mainly going to be surviving on corn. Because what happened when corn was introduced to Europe, they did not nixtamalize it, and a lot of poor people in Europe started having corn as their main grain, and they really, like you've heard of polenta in Italy, they started having corn as their main grain, and a lot of people became very, very sick with pellagra, specifically due to the lack of niacin and it just not being the best grain by itself for your main grain. So before I show you guys how to nixtamalize it, once again, you need to nixtamalize it in order to release the niacin, the calcium, and increase the protein. It also makes it more easily digestible, and all the nutrients are able to be absorbed where you can live on corn. So this is your main grain. You need to know how to nixtamalize it so you do not become deficient. Now, one last thing I want to say about nixtamalization is it's really fascinating with the history, because it's kind of still being done the same way in many ways, even to this day in Mexico. So my husband has been to Mexico more in smaller villages, and he has seen those women out there with their buckets of corn that they're soaking overnight, cooking and soaking the night before in order to make the masa dough the next day, and they're out there and they're grinding it. Now, many villages in Mexico now have either places where people just buy their tortillas, or they have their own mills that they can now mill it, because as you'll see with our corn tortilla video, can be quite labor intensive. So modern technology has certainly helped that, but as far as the nixtamalization process goes, it hasn't changed in thousands of years. So now, let's get to how to actually nixtamalize corn. And good news, it sounds crazy and complicated, but it's really not. So let's switch up this camera and show you how it's done. Okay, so first of all, we want to grab a really big pot, and to that we're going to be adding 5 1/4 quarts of water, or 5 liters of water. And then we're going to be grabbing our calcium lime, also known as calcium hydroxide. You can buy this from Azure Standard or various other places. And we're going to be adding about a 1/2 cup of it. So don't do it like I did where it goes everywhere. Do it a little bit closer to the water. And then we're going to stir that in until it is fully dissolved. And now we're going to grab our corn. Now, traditionally speaking, a dent corn is used. It can be yellow or white. As you can see, I'm using yellow, but it just needs to be a dent corn. Field corn can also be used, which is generally dent corn. But you're going to need 4.4 pounds or 2 kilograms of this corn, and we're going to dump it in and give it a good stir. And as you can already see, it becomes way more vibrant of a yellow when using yellow corn. And so we're going to bring this up to a boil. I like to stir on occasion. And whenever it gets to a boil, you now have a couple of options. So some people, one of the recipes I see is then you bring it to a simmer and let it simmer for about an hour. I was a bit more in a rush, and so I actually brought it to a really good boil like this, although be careful because it will splash, and I just let it cook. Now, a few things that you want to make sure of is, first of all, definitely make sure that the corn is always submerged in the water. And then you know when it needs to start being checked, because first of all, this water is going to be getting quite yellow. And then you're going to start checking to see if the husk or the skin of the corn is starting to come off. So you'll see me here while I'm pulling it out and I'm checking where, you know, it's starting to look good, but not quite yet. And so you just put it back in and you just keep going. Again, if it's on a simmer, this could take about an hour. If it's up to a boil like I have, usually it's done in about maybe 20 or 30 minutes. So here we have it. It's starting to, you can already see kind of looking a bit more mushy, but not actually mushy. But you start seeing those skins coming off, and I know that it's good. So I turn off the heat and put a lid on, and now it's going to sit completely overnight. And here we are the next morning. You can see some of it came above the water, which is okay for now. And usually you want it to be about 12 to 16 hours. I'm going to give this a good stir, get it all submerged under the water again, and then we're putting a lid back on it because I can't get to it yet. This morning, we're going to be getting to it later in the day. This has actually been going all day, so you can see it is kind of funky looking. And now comes something that's just going to take time. We need to completely rinse this. We have to completely rinse off not only the skins, but also all the calcium lime to get that funky taste off. So it helps if you have a large sink. You're going to need a large bowl. We're just going to dump this all in there, and then a colander. They always say plastic is better, but use what you have. And let's go ahead. Because I do not have a big enough colander, we're going to do a little bit at a time, and I found that doing a little bit at a time is a bit easier. So I first like to put it in the bowl, and then here we start rubbing it together to start getting those skins off. Those will start to float to the top, and we just do this. And the point is you got to keep doing this. It's a lot of rinsing until the water is completely cleared. Now, do know some people will like to take off these little ends, because otherwise that will give you little specks in your masa. I don't care about the specks so much to do this on individual corn, so we're going to leave them on. But if they come off, that's okay. So do this. All right, and now colander. And now I just like to start rinsing, and you're going to also be rubbing the corn up against these ridges in here. That also helps get rid of the hole. And right now you're going to feel it where it's kind of slimy feeling. And you know when the skins are off because it's no longer, and all the calcium lime is off, because it's no longer going to feel slimy. And you can see it breaks apart very easily. So this corn, even though it was dry, is now going to grind up easier. All right, and we're just going to keep doing this, and it's just a matter of rinsing, switching, anything, any bad stuff like that, take out. We don't want any black corn. And we just rinse. I put it back in the bowl. And you see here that a lot of the skins, a lot of these skins are stuck in the colander, and that's good. So now I rinse that out. to get the skins off. So the next time I put it in here, it's less skins. So there's that. Fill this up again. And you can already see the water is looking clearer than it was last time. And so now we're just going to repeat. And one thing I want to point out is if you have these little drainer things, these help to keep, you can tell it's getting those little skins and stuff here. You're going to see them collect there. So you're going to want to empty that out a lot. And you can see the state of the sink. Colander again. Pour out. Okay, so again, here we are. It's still not light enough because we're wanting clear water. And I can tell parts of it are still a bit slimy, but we just have to continue to wash off that calcium lime and all of those skins. And as you can see, if you leave it long enough, those skins are gonna, you can see somewhere it's on my hand a bit. It's gonna start floating up to the top as well. And again, this is just a time-consuming process. That's why I prefer to do this in a very big batch. And then we're gonna freeze some of it, a lot of it. And then I'll already have nixtamalized corn for whenever I need it. Okay, now I'm not really feeling that sliminess anymore, but we still have some holes in it. Hence why the water is looking better, but still has some holes, the skins in it. All right, so let's, and if you pour slowly at first, one thing I forgot to do, all of those little skins and holes are coming off first, because those generally float to the top. And then I can take it, rinse that all out. Now we go in. All right, we're almost there, almost there. So if you can see, the last 2 or 3 rinses I've done, I haven't fully dumped them out in the colander because I'm just getting so close. I'm gonna do that this time though. Go ahead and dump. Just so I can make sure if there's anything in here, we can give this a rinse. All right, and that, I will say, is actually pretty good. It's still slightly cloudy. I still see some things floating up. So I'm going to dump this out one last time, but I will be okay with that. The past 2, maybe 3 to 4 rinses I have done, I have definitely not dealt with that sliminess anymore. So I know that that calcium lime, all the skins are off. But as you can see, it's pretty much mostly clear, definitely way more than it was. Probably what's making it still slightly cloudy is, I didn't pick off all those little brown ends here at the tip of it, but that's okay. I'm okay with this. The biggest thing, you definitely want to make sure that sliminess is off and that this is mostly clear. So now this is done. We're going to set it aside and I'm going to process the rest of it. Yeah, and just so my instincts were correct because I just really took this out, put some water back in, and that's looking good. So again, set it aside and we're going to do this again for a long time. So again, this is why I recommend doing large batches because it is time consuming, and let's just get large batches done. I'm going to freeze them in appropriate amounts. So that way I already have them nixtamalized and everything for whenever I need it. Forgot to actually show you, but here's the finished product. As you can see, it is wet, but now it's ready to be used. So there you have it, y'all. Nixtamalized corn. Now with this, you can just throw it right into soups. It's actually called pozole, in a Mexican soup that is absolutely delicious, among other things. And if you really have not fallen in love with authentic Mexican cooking, you're really missing out. And again, I will link these books down in the description box below that I highly recommend to help you get started. But this is the basic for nixtamalization with corn, a base that is needed for corn tortillas and hominy grits and other things with Mexican cooking. So hopefully this was helpful. I do have a playlist called Meet the Grain if you want to see my first video about einkorn. This video will be in it as well, talking about corn. And then I'm also starting another playlist about corn and all the things that you can do with it. And we'll be adding to that very close in the future. So hopefully this was helpful and that y'all learned some fun things. And as always, hopefully y'all have a wonderful day and I'll see you next week. Bye.